being recorded.
Now we have to behave. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So the disclaimer for this is on top where it says Teaching Professors Conference.
Yeah.
So this packet is for you to take with you. And I'm going to walk you through the packet. And two young ladies, Sophia and Stephanie from OCC, they presented at the Teaching Professors Conference, which is a conference put on by Magna Publications. And they do faculty focus and do some things like that. And it's all about learning different teaching methodologies. And I attended this session, and it was really, really super good. I did it last fall, and I thought that this was a really good session to do again. And the overlying outcome of this packet is how to approach, if you're going to do any type of, have your students read articles, case studies, and helping them learn a little bit of a concrete way to think, highlight, and retract the information from the various articles. I put out highlighters. We're going to make you play as well.
Okay.
But so the first thing, so there's 4 different topics that I'm going to talk about. So the first one is broken down in the packet. Read, think, highlight, analyze articles, and if we have time, I'll talk about study note options. Do you do any types of exams or quizzes in your class?
Sometimes, not in the high school, but in my English class.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first half of this will be more of how to show your students how to read articles effectively, pull the information out. Then we'll move right into taking that information and how to then create study notes and then how to predict questions from what they just studied.
Okay.
So the first thing we're going to do is talk about the rethink highlights. We turn to this page, rethink highlight page. And what they were saying is when a student, think back in your college days. I should have brought my textbook in. I took a yellow highlighter, and I highlighted almost everything. You open my textbook and do a scan in the textbook, almost all you see is yellow. I was a very ineffective highlighter. What they're saying is, if you take this, if you take the highlighter, so it's the highlighter packet, and each color, so you want to encourage your students to buy a packet like this, you need at least 5 colors. Preferably 6. This is a perfect packet, even though these 2 are pretty close in color. So the next thing you do is you pick out a color, and then you take your packet, and I can give you a blank packet to take with you too. And when you're reading the article, you're going to say to them, you look at the article as a whole, then you take a step back and you know that in articles, many articles have headers in there. In each header, what is the key term paragraph under that header? And we're going to highlight an article in a few minutes.
Okay.
So then you pull out in those key term paragraphs, is there a term? Is there a definition? Is there a clear example? And those are typically, this is going to move right into what you have quizzes. So if you take one of your highlighters, and then you take it and you just so I'm going to choose pink for terms. So I'm going to take in my packet. So this packet is, you can pull this out, and I can even send this to you digitally. And so say if you only want to do this piece, you can pull this out and hand it to your students in class and say, here's an effective way when I have you go through, you want to read articles, you're going to have a quiz on the article. You're going to have to come to a presentation or write a summary. And so any terms, as you're going through, take your pink highlighter out and do this pink. And then take a second highlighter. And then any definitions you find is I'm going to highlight it. I picked blue. But it's really important that you have the students do this because then they have this next to them every single time they read an article in their class. They have the highlighters next to you. And then every time they find a term, they pick up the pink highlighter and highlight it in pink. Anytime they see then the term, so then say the term is this, then the definition, so they showing one word in pink, then they take the blue highlighter and highlight the definition. So when you review the article again, immediately all the pink highlights are the terms, and the blue highlights are the definition. And then third one, take our third highlighter, and any example that is given in paragraph or throughout the article, they highlight it in a different color. And I chose orange. Now, any examples that they see is orange. If there are key term paragraphs or really high-level paragraphs that don't have any of these, usually you're going to find a list, or they might list, like they might say, here is 5 methods to do how to blow up a balloon. When they do a list, well, lists are completely different. You take a different color highlighter. If there's a list, and you pick one color for the topic of the list, and a second color for the items in the list. And what we've done now is we've successfully taken 5 different colored highlighters. We got a color for the term, definition, the clear example, and any of the list. We have a color for the topic of the list. And now, when they go down to the article, now we have a very effective way of how to highlight and then go back and review the article. And you want to say to them, make sure you don't over-highlight. They do sell erasable highlighters, and it's really highly encouraged if you do a lot of, if you have a lot of reading, if you have a textbook that you want them to read, and you really need them to absorb that information from the textbook or article, erasable highlighters are really good. When OCC does this course, they actually, this is a minor part of their packet, they have a textbook, and so this would end up being an assignment. They would then hand an article to the students and say, go and highlight, turn it in, and they have to use erasable highlighters, and then the faculty would then, in the margin, say this is highlighted incorrectly, and they can go erase and fix it. And as they move through the semester, then they very effectively, very rarely have to do the erasable. They learn how to really look for the terms and really effectively, then they do a lot better on the test, and do a lot better on reading comprehension. Is that good?
Sounds good.
So then on the back side, it says, what if there are no terms or no lists? So the reason for the 6-color highlighter is some articles may not have any terms, may not have, but you still want the students to be able to find the main point of the paragraph. And that's where you take your 6-color highlighter and you say, okay, now in this color, and the yellows are very closely the same. It's very hard to get 6 colors. Yeah, those yellows are pretty thing. And if they can't find a 6-color highlighter, that's where they say find something that could replicate or even a dry erase. So our dry erase colors, you can get turquoise, purple, or take a, don't ever, tell them not to ever do a permanent marker, but then now they might find the main point. That's what we do the 6. How do you feel about that? Do you think it's too elementary for your kids, students?
Not at all. I think it's a skill. As long as they have the color coordinating, even if they had colored pencils or something, they could do something. Like that.
Colored pencils,
or come up with numbers. Or
anything. It's just, you want to make sure that they do it so that they can use it. Colored pencils and things like that will be a little bit harder. You want to make it very easy when they look back. Oh, there's the blue. There's a definition.
Right.
Oh, there's the green. That's the topic of the list. They're very, very easy because in this packet, there's a nice rubric that they can actually go in and pull this information out and apply it to the rubric to study for tests, quizzes, or even write their summaries for the article. They can just go, oh, terms, and it's really easy to pull out and translate. So that is found on, after the analyzing articles. You know what, I'm going to number these pages for the future. It's after the analyzing article. So if you go through this article, it's
about the cell phones?
It's after the cell phone article.
Yeah.
So what I want to do now before I go, so these are the two ways you can blank these out. These are two excellent guides to give your students, and it will help them. One of the questions I had last fall was, I have my students do case studies, and it's really hard for the students to go find the main points and really pull out, and they didn't want to have to create a rubric or a matrix. So this is a really great way for them to go down through the case study and pull out the headings and the supporting points. So we take one step back. I'm going to have you go back to the next page after the highlighters. It's called Reading and Analyzing the Article. So we've done, oh, I didn't do my beautiful highlighting. Oh, we just did the highlighters. So now we're going to move to analyzing. What I want to focus on here is, it says step 1 at the top, but technically it's step 1 in their chapter book. But really we're not doing a step 1. It's deceiving in this packet. But we're going to go, so ignore the step 1. We're going to go in and identify the author's central message, claim, or supporting points. So now I've showed you how to use highlighters to effectively highlight articles, case studies, textbooks. Now, if you have them read articles, do you have your students read articles?
Sure.
Okay, so articles are a little bit different. So now let's try not to, I'm going to put the textbooks aside and case study aside and focus on articles. When you think about articles, what is your main goal? What is the outcome that you want your students to get out of the article?
The main idea, arguments, if there's any being made, and the basic content.
Right, and is it really necessary for the reader to always agree with the author?
Definitely not.
Right. So that's what really confuses the students, because sometimes they'll say, you know, I'm reading this article and I really don't agree, and so therefore I'm not going to read it, and they have a really hard time reading it. So this, by helping them analyze the article and telling them up front, you're really reading the article for the content and the subject of the article, but you don't always have to agree with the content. So if we take this, and now what you've done, now you've got the highlighters, and you can still do the same concept of the highlighters in an article, about main points, supporting points. What you want to do now is you want to pull out the author's main message. So you're going to do point of view or message. So you want to the subject of the article and what it's about. And then the claim is the author's point of view or message about the topic. This is when I'm in my class, and I have, I don't know if you have this problem, Jeff, but sometimes when, because you pass out a lot of articles too, where when you pass out the article and you give them as additional resources, sometimes they won't read it, sometimes when they do, they're totally missing that what the author's claiming or what the direct message from the author is. And by going through the techniques that we're going to walk through now, it's going to help them focus more on what is the message from the author. So why are you giving this article to students without having to stand there and tell them?
Right.
You know, you want to lead them to the article, but you also want them to dig into the information themselves. So if you turn the page to the next one where it says a claim, so this is really great to give to your students because you're telling them these next 5 bullets, this is what you're not, this is the author's not doing. The claim is never a question. It's not a phrase. It's not a word or a quote from the article. It's not informational, nor is it a statement that begins by mentioning the author. What you want them to do is, so this is how an appropriate claim should sound. This is a simple article. The claim is, tattooing has become increasingly accepted as an important art form in our culture. People no longer need to be worried about getting one because our attitudes have changed. I may not agree with that, but the article that they gave as an example pulled out, the article is in the book, in the textbook, and they said that this is the claim that the author is making. What you want the students to do is you want them to come up with that claim and what is the message. Once they've done that, then they can come up with the supporting points, and the next 3 pages walks the student through on what the supporting points are. So I'm going to take a step backwards for 1 second. So if we were going to talk to our students, your students in the class, do you think that they would accept this? Do you think they'd have a hard time understanding the way to analyze an article by approaching the topic in the plane?
At the beginning of the semester, sure.
I do too.
Yeah.
I agree. So if you gave them this packet and had them read this and walk them through, so it starts out by saying most college students expect that they'll be required to read and process textbook content for most of their classes. It can be a surprise when an instructor also finds extra reading. I know by the time they get to a graduate level class, they know there's going to be extra readings, there's going to be articles, case studies, and whatnot. I just had the experience of having a graduate student come into my office yesterday. I was revising this PowerPoint. He asked what I was doing, and as a grad student, he said, "Oh my gosh, I should come to your session because I don't know how to do that." You know, so it really opened my eyes. I, for some reason, focus more on undergrad students when I think about this. Like, you know, grad students, sometimes we get the international students that come, and this is, so from your perspective, I think this would be really super helpful for your class.
Absolutely. Yeah, because they have the same amount of reading material that American students do, but they don't have the ability to read it as quickly.
That's right.
So if they have these kind of tools, they can get through that much information a lot quicker, and it becomes less of a burden for them.
Yeah, and once they do it, by week 3 or 4, they should be just flying through the highlighters and then flying through the highlighters would be great for textbook and also great for articles. But now if we take, if they've done the highlighting, they find it, now what you want to do is help them find the supporting points. It's going to be very difficult for some students to find the claim of the message. But if they take it and then they say, oh gosh, you know, that article had 2 headers. It should trigger, well then I need to find the overall claim the author's saying, then I need to find 2 supporting points for those headers. So supporting point is a series of convincing arguments intended to persuade the reader to agree with the author's view. Or it can be, Dave lists down here, that essential message, or it can be generalized. So what they want to do is not do generalized statements. They don't want specific examples or quotes from experts. You want to say something like, secondhand smoke has been found to be a dangerous health hazard for both adults and young children. So do you have any articles that you can think of in mind that you've had students that struggled coming up with the message or that have struggled coming up with, you know, if not been able to pass the quiz or come up with a summary?
Yeah, I mean, I'm using an article now that they're trying to summarize in one of my undergraduate classes. It's about, the title of the article is Why We Need Violent Video Games. Right? So most people think, that violent video games are causing young people to become violent and maybe even using guns in public areas, and because they think it's a video game, right?
Right.
But this author takes the position that that's not the case at all. There's no science behind or data that shows that young people are playing Call of Duty and then killing people as a result.
Right.
It's more an issue of previous mental illness or something. And that, in fact, these games could be used to calm you down, right? Because you can get your anxiousness or your pent-up stress out of you by, going into the virtual world of killing, if you will, or playing these kind of games. So they have a hard time picking out exactly what he's saying and what it and where is his evidence coming from, and what are his supporting points, and that sort of thing. So that's something we're working on now. And then we will take that and then ultimately try to critique that article, right?
Right, so that would be a great example of that they wouldn't have to agree with what the author's saying. You know, so they...
Yeah, and in fact, a lot of them do agree ultimately.
Right.
That age group, right?
Right.
Because they've been hearing their parents complain about them playing these games, and that, you know, when Sandy Hook happened in Connecticut, the president came out against that, and Biden was trying to get video game companies to get a bring back your violent video game thing to get a less violent game, like maybe a dance game or something, only because they felt that's what they should do, right? And most of us who are older would think similarly, I imagine, right?
Right.
But the young ones, they don't, you know, the 20-somethings or the 18-year-olds, they don't really think that's the case at all.
So how long is the article? Does it have?
Yeah, it's no longer than the article you have here about the cell phones, yeah.
So they picked this one, the same example that you picked, you know, the powerful distraction of cell phones, even when you're not using it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what they had us do, which I don't know, we probably don't take time to do this tonight, but what they had us do is take our highlighter and see if we could find any terms or definitions, and they gave us a few minutes to do that. And then they said, well, now let's take it, now here's an actual article, you've done your highlighting, the terms, any examples. Obviously, there aren't any true lists in here, so there wasn't any to do with that. But then they said, now that you've done that, you've highlighted, make sure you don't over-highlight, because now what they wanted, so you could have them highlight this article on the video game, and then you say, now that you've highlighted what you think are the terms, if you find new definitions, there may not be many in the article, which is fine, but now you want to turn to this page, which is titled RDG 093, it's called Step 1 Article Summary Sheet. So I left the Step 1 in there because it obviously correlates to here, but I could always pull this in and take the Step 1 off.
Yeah.
What's nice about this is now this could enable your students that video games. They could put the title of the article, who the author is, but then they have to come up with a topic of the article, which is different than the title. And then they have to summarize what do they believe the author's claim is. What is the message? And then each heading, if there's a heading, like this one is when it's visible. Mm-hmm. The second heading is on the road. Then the student would then put that, when it's visible, then they would find what point is the author making in this section to convince me to agree with his or her claim. So now, this particular way of analyzing the article could be one approach of how to get the student to come up with supporting points that, that support the author's point of view. You can also take it in a different approach, and you can change this matrix and say, what are the messages or of a convincing of support? But you can have them bring in their point of view, their reflection. So what they're telling me that they didn't put in here, but they also have the students do, is so they have this particular worksheet to have the students analyze, bring the message in, and supporting evidence to support the author's message. But they can also take the students one step further for reflection, for their own point of view, and take the same exact matrix, but just change this trend to say what else is supporting. So you can leave their supporting, and you can say, or more, and you can say, now do one or two of what is your reflection of what is your point of view. Because I know Jeff does this. You don't mind me quoting when you do it. And I do it in my class is sometimes I'm not overly concerned how they analyze the article. I don't want them to summarize it. But I want them, and Jeff does the same thing, is get the students to think, what are your thoughts? What do you think about this article? and that can open a really good discussion. So you can have a great discussion of analyzing the article and a great discussion on their point of view, because not everyone's going to agree with the author. That can go into a great in-class debate, can go into great team discussions, team competition. So even by taking some of these, it can move into great in-class group activities or pairs or individual activities as well. Is that?
Yeah, so what you're saying is once they break down the article and they put in the supporting points as they apply to the different headings, that they could either add more supporting points to those headings that agree with the author or conversely do the opposite.
They could do the opposite. Yes, they could do that.
Thinking of counterclaims, perhaps.
They could,
Yeah.
but it takes away from analyzing the article to make sure that so this is an article summary sheet.
Yep.
What I'm saying is you can actually add you can do a separate sheet, title it like article reflection or article point of view, or you can, if you want to do that, you can do, counterpoint.
Right. But strictly as a summary, you wouldn't come up with a counter argument or add any opinion, really.
I would keep this one. Probably what I should have done or could do, because they didn't provide that. I'm trying to stick to their package, so they gave me permission to do that. But what I do, I have my students technically look at the article and I walk them through this process. My students really love this process. It really has helped them really pull the meat out of the article. Then what I do in my class is I play games. Like I also have them get into teams, and then they discuss the article, or it could even be a video. It could be anything that I want them to really come so that we have an in-class active discussion. And then I take them to say, okay, now what is your point of view? How did you feel about that? Sometimes I have them write it in reflection in Blackboard in the journal. Other times I have them just talk it amongst themselves in the group. But I haven't created another sheet. But what they were saying in that session, and when they didn't offer it to us, is they encourage their students to go one step further. And I could probably make up a nice sheet where, so instead of saying supporting points and having this paragraph right here, it could say the heading, and then it could say, as a reader, what is your point of view on this? Or it could even give it a supporting point. So then you can allow them to, sometimes what happens in classes, when we read the articles, we talk about the point of view, we talk about what the author message is. A lot of times students don't get to explore what their point of view and how their reflection of how they would summarize the article.
Right. Because they're just taking in the article.
Right. Sometimes we assign articles or readings or textbooks for them to prepare for an exam or, for a certain assessment, which is the next piece of it.
Yeah.
But this piece right now is how to get them to help comprehend, more like a reading comprehension, how to analyze an article. This is like a pre-course. They take their students back and they walk, this is an entire semester course. By the time they get to here, they're probably in week 4 or 5.
Right.
It took them the first couple 3 weeks to do the highlighter and the think.
Get it right,
Yeah, the think one.
Robert, do you use Blackboard?
I do, yeah.
So one of the things that I've been thinking about as you've been going through this is putting this in a wiki. This form right here, and then putting them in groups, and then having it a group project, because they can all go into the wiki,
right?
And as a group, figuring these things out about that article. I thought that would be a cool idea to help them figure out what are the main points of each of the sections.
Yeah, I do it now as a scan. I just scan the page in as a PDF. And
Right.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Because then it could be electronic, and the nice thing about this is you can make one wiki and then copy it and keep pasting it into their wiki so that they can keep redoing it over and over. So you don't have to retype this every time.
Right.
Do you know what we're talking about?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
And they can do that in class or outside of class, like a
Exactly.
Google Doc.
Right,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. It's very similar to a Google Doc,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but it would be in Blackboard.
Sure, and you'd have it under control.
Exactly.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
So I'm gonna pause for a second and revisit what we just did before I go into the study notes and stuff.
Okay.
So we just walked the students how to do, so what I do with my students, I'll share, my students think the highlighting is childish, and a lot of them laugh, and they'll say, I'm not doing that. But I do another childish activity, and I call it kindergarten.
Yeah.
I do another kindergarten activity the first day of class, and which involves Post-it notes. And I also make them storyboards. I do a presentation class. I actually give them paper and make them storyboard with different color markers and whatnot. Time we get to this, they're thinking, oh boy, I'm getting how much money for a college class? Now so far all we've done is Post-it notes, and now we're doing highlighters. But it's really hard because I have these packets of highlighters, but it's very difficult to do this unless you can really bring highlighters into class. But then when you have 30 students in class, obviously I can't buy 30 highlight packets.
Right.
So I usually bring in, this is what I usually bring in, I just have them pass the packet, or I just hold it up and say, this is what you would do. And I don't give them this entire packet. I walk them through this, and then when we get to articles, I typically, I share this page with them, the read, think, highlight. But it's very difficult to do it unless you have enough highlighters. Because what we just did is we highlighted, and then when they walk away, they're like, oh yeah, pink, blue, orange, green. And I will tell you, it's very difficult if you don't have the highlighters. When you just tell them what to do, then they're like, unless they can. And for some reason, when they first started, they think it's a big joke. They don't want to do it. But once they get doing it, and they go out and they purchase highlighters, and they get into week 3 or 4, then I have them come back in. I start quizzing them, playing a technology game for review, and then we get into teams. And next thing you know, I love it. I'll hear someone say, oh, my blue highlight really worked. I'm going, oh, that's awesome. Then you can start, and all of them say, what blue highlight, what? And they'll say, remember that thing? It's really neat in how it goes through. Then by the time we get about halfway in the semester, they're finally getting it, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I don't mind because it's going to help them for the next class. Then the reading, analyzing article is the undergrad. I typically don't hand them all of this stuff. For a grad student, you might want to do it.
Right.
I simply use this as a matrix, as a guide. And I talk them through how to do it, but I've tried it both ways, and I'll tell you, my students have found this handout a little bit on the confusing side, because they focus more on what's in the handout versus reading the article. And then that is just I'm not telling you what to do or how to do it, I'm saying, but if you can give, grad students might be a little different. They might be able to comprehend the handout and to analyze an article.
Yeah.
Now, the next page after...
Can I just ask a question?
Yes,
I don't know, Jeff, maybe you know something about this, but have you both used Turnitin?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know how when you're grading, you can use different colors, and you can create your own sort of rubric and, awkward or verb tense for me as an English teacher. And you can get different colors. You would think somehow there would be a software program where you could do this stuff electronically. You know what I mean? Like if you created a PDF of an article, and then I don't know if it exists, but it seems like you can't be that far off. Turnitin is using this technology, you know what I mean?
Right.
You mean the highlighting?
Yeah. So have you ever highlighted a paper when you're in Turnitin?
No.
Yeah, because it gives you the what do you call it? The plagiarism report and originality report, I think it's called.
Right.
And for someone like me, so when I'm reading, I'm also reading for their English grammar and their spelling. So I use different colors to highlight different things in the document,
Right.
right? And then I'm thinking it's kind of similar to this, but without the markers.
So Word can do that too, Microsoft Word.
Yeah, I've never done it in Word. You can do it in Word too?
Sure,
Yeah.
it has a highlighter feature with different colors.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But a PDF
I'm just thinking, like, how can we get the article
electronically,
and also highlight without using highlighters? Because of your question at the beginning about sort of,
Right.
I don't have enough highlighters, and if you can't, it's hard to demand that they all get highlighters.
Right.
I was wondering if there's a way around, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Because it would be super if you could be doing something like this. You have the article there, and they all had their laptops, and they would started doing it in Word or whatever.
You can in Word.
Yeah.
Has the highlight next to where the font is.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah, you
I've
take
done
your
that.
curtain
Because I was just thinking of track changes, and it's not like that. But yeah, you can highlight and then fix something later. You can do it in Google Doc too. Yeah.
so if we go up right here,
Right.
and then here's all your colors.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
So that's unfortunately, almost everything I put up into Blackboard, I PDF it.
Right.
Yeah, but there's annotating PDF
Yeah.
tools where one of them has to, I know they have highlighters. I can get back to you with that if you're interested. I can send it to you.
Yeah, because this is great. But I'm just like have the same concern that you mentioned. It's like not having enough of them,
Right.
and then not having enough colors. But if we
Right.
could somehow make it all electronic, and I
Yeah.
could start using different kinds of PDFs.
Then you can put up the articles right in Blackboard. They
Right.
can pull it down in their group activity and highlight it together,
Exactly.
you know, versus passing these out. I mean, I can easily do this when I have 5 packets,
Right.
but I have 7 teams in my class,
Yeah.
you know, and to be honest with you, things grow feet and walk away.
Sure.
Not that you try to get your
Yeah, right.
entire packet back, you know,
They're gone before you get them.
when the hubbub of everyone leaving.
Yeah, and then it's not all intentional.
It's exactly, it's
Yeah.
not all intentional.
Yeah.
You know, it's like their tent cards. Next thing you know, they come back next time and sorry, I forgot this with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we'll get back to you on that. But
Okay.
that's a really good idea. Thank you for that.
Ah,
I wouldn't have.
I think it's just like shifting to the next.
Yeah.
Because I've been trying to do, in my own teaching, try to use less paper all the time. And the more I find, because my students are always asking me, is this on Blackboard? Is this on Blackboard? Yeah, and most of the time I say yes, and I'm like, no, not yet, but I'm working on getting that on Blackboard. Like every semester, try to get a little bit more on Blackboard.
We have F and F support student team. Do you know about them?
No.
So the F support student team, they just
F like the letter?
F, yep, F support. Yeah, F.edu will go to our team of students. Say, for example, you had your video article, which is 2 pages,
Yeah.
and you want to digitize it. Or even if you had it, if you all of you had it paper, obviously you'd have to get it over here, but our students can scan it in and convert it to PDF, and they can email it to you.
Right. I can do that on my photocopier.
Oh, then
Yeah. Are they doing anything beyond that that you would do with the photocopier?
they can print for you. There's many different functions that they can do for you, but probably the biggest one is copying, scanning. If, like for example, your textbooks, if they can do like less than 10%, 15% of the textbook for you.
Right.
They can want to put books on reserve for the library, things like that.
Okay.
Yes. So, but if you can do it, I'd say if you already have electronically, you can email it to them. Wow, okay, that's good. So back to this. After
Yeah.
the article summary, the next page is called an article score guide. And this is only, it's in here, but this is something that you could use if you wanted to grade this. But I left it in here, but I truly believe that we grade accordingly when you read. But this,
Yeah, so this is kind of like a rubric for us to use with them, yeah.
it is, but I would, I'm even thinking about taking it right out of the packet because we all have our own way of grading.
Yeah.
But it just gives you, I like some of the definitions within the criteria you might like and say, state the topic, claim is, so you could use maybe some of these statements you could use as part of your grading, but not use, or you might like to use it. But I do like, for example, like claim has been copied directly from the article paraphrase.
Yep.
Claim focuses on a narrow detail and this is the overall message. So there could be some good statements in here that you could just plagiarize and use get paid. So that's what I have for analyzing articles.
Okay.
And you said you do a SAM
Yes.
test? Okay. So the next couple pieces that I want to talk about is, the next one is how to do study note options. Now what's nice about this is in this packet, this is defined really super nice. If you have many students, a very high percentage of students, really don't have the study skills that they need or the appropriate study skills or how to study effectively. This gives 5 different methods to share with your students on ways that they can study. These are based from textbooks, articles, or case studies. So what they've done is, method 1 is what's called term chart. Now they've highlighted all their terms in a certain color. I'll use color blue. So they can now go back through their textbook and they can find all of the blue. And then they can create this matrix. In row 1 we say term. Then they find their green definitions. They write them right here. Then they paraphrase it. And then they can give an example, which could be highlighted in the clear examples in pink. Now they've done all of the footwork, and now you can provide a matrix like this for them and say, you're going to have a quiz or midterm coming up in 3 weeks based on the terminology from chapters 1 through 10, or whatever. And then they can come right in here, boom, and write them right down. And the paraphrasing is nice because you can say, I'm going to do 30 multiple choice, I'm going to do 10 fill-in, I'm going to do 2 essay questions. The paraphrasing of the term helps them study for and prepare for essay questions.
Right.
So this chart, by doing a term chart, helps them multiple choice, true, false, fill-in, and essay. The annotated outline is the second one. And this is a little bit more complicated, and I'm going to say I've never personally used this. And it's a way to analyze the article with the supporting points, and they can develop an outline. This, Stephanie and Sophia said, is a really hard method, and this method is used more if it's a writing class or an English class, and it's really imperative that you dig deep down into the author's message. I'm going to say this is a pretty high level. I'll go over it more if you think this would be something that you like, but the annotated outline is very time-consuming, and it's a really high challenge for students to do. But it takes that matrix they did with the analyzed article and forces them to go one step further and do an outline and pull in more supporting points. Index card is old school. We all know how to do index cards. What they said is most students come to college and they'll take index cards. We've done all of that. Oh yeah, I did it in grade school, did it in high school. And what Sophia and Stephanie said, most kids are doing it incorrectly. Or they're not utilizing the index cards to the fullest potential. And then they come in with a stack of index cards cards this thick because they're doing one for every term, and they're not understanding. So if they take their term chart, and then they do the index cards, so they make them do the term chart first. And the index card is a great way for memorization because they're repeating. And then here's a great example of what the front of the card will look like and the back of the card. But you notice that what they're doing on the front of the card is a heading.
Right.
And they're doing multiple terms under the heading for one card. So what they're doing is they're taking the students of their term chart, combining with the analyzing the articles by headers, and now saying take all of your terms, now take a step back, now take one card, what was the header or the chapter, and now take those terms and put them in one card. And they encourage the students to use the bigger cards, not the tiny ones,
Right.
and make sure they're lined. And the front side is the blank side, and the line side you would do the terms. And then they can even have more than one card per topic, but then their stack of cards go from this down to a really skinny pair. And having less cards, even though there's more information on the card, they're claiming the students can study better.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up doing one term. You write the term on the front of the card, the definition on the back, and that's how you study.
Right.
And I would carry around a huge stack. So for me, this was really hard for me to comprehend. And I don't do tests in my class. I haven't been able to utilize this. I've had a couple of instructors that have used this, and they said the students really like doing this method versus doing just one term per index card.
Yeah, especially if there's like connections between
Right.
things. Yeah. And there's a lot of material or terms and vocabulary. Yeah, it'd be quite useful.
Yeah, and I was quite surprised when they were presenting this at the conference because you could see around the room everyone went, what? That's not how I was raised. You know, you have people my age, and you have younger people, people off, people that were probably fresh out of college saying, some people would say, index card, that is so old school. But what they're doing is, I know we're saying the highlighting in the digital, which would help, but so part of me wants to say, yes, pull the article up in Word and have them highlight, but there's something to be said about putting pen to paper. And there's something to be said about taking that highlighter and drawing the highlighter across the paper. And then there's something to be said about taking your pen and then translating it into the term chart. And she said that the kids who handwrite their term chart and then type it do a lot better than the ones that physically just type it. There's something about the memory of when you're typing that your mind goes elsewhere because your fingers are typing, your mind's not typing. This is what they said. And so they said, it's great to do, but for grad students, I really like the idea of doing the highlighting.
So
Oh, cool.
I put it up there because there's a tool called Quizlet. Have you ever used that before?
No.
It's free.
Yeah.
And it allows you to do electronic flashcards. So all you have to do is, and this is something I did in my class, is you just create these terms and then the definitions. You create each one of these individually, and then you'll see that the software can do all of these things with your terms and definitions. So all you have to do is click on flashcard, and then it creates the flashcard for you. And you kind of play this game where you get it right or you get it wrong.
Oh, that is so cool.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And then it actually does it, it'll play the sound too, and it's good for your students because it enunciates perfectly.
Absolutely.
Others are assigned. Team exists as long as task goals remain.
And then you figure out what's the definition.
So who does the Quizlet? Is that the instructor or the student?
Students can do it too. They just create an account using their Google account,
Oh, that's pretty cool.
and then they can put in whatever they want in there. And it's pretty cool. They have games in here too based on the terms.
Right.
They can do spelling. They can do tests on their own. they make their own set of these things, and then they can do all of these things based off of these.
Well, I can see a new session starting, skip the, read across the curriculum and jumping right into how to.
And there's a lot of public ones, too, that are already made,
Yeah.
that say, you just search for them and you can use them, like right away. You don't have to create them from scratch.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Do you think, Jeff, there's a way to replicate the term chart in Quizlet? So what is it, so this was two-sided of the flashcards, what else does it do? Because would it be able to, I know I'm asking a lot, but if we did the term definition.
You can do match, so you flip the term, then you find the definition, you flip the card.
So we could technically do term and do definition,
You can definitely do definition.
but then we can also do term.
Oh, yeah, you can do term, because you can put in the term and then the definition. You can put in the term and then
Then the paraphrase.
you paraphrase it
And
yourself.
then term, an example.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I'll have to play with that.
There's so many, like, different things you can do with it. I used it for, the test piece.
Yeah. Is it just short answer?
No, it's, I haven't used it in a while.
Sorry, no
Okay, then.
questions.
I'm gonna have to add a sample here. Here we go. There. So it's multiple choice, right?
And did you type these things?
Yes, I typed them in, but it creates the test.
So you type it in, quick test. Is this a practice test?
Right, so we would do this together in class,
Hmm.
and we would discuss it.
Oh, so leave that up because that leads to the predicting questions section. Oh, I paid him to do this.
Before we go any further though, I wanted to show you the PDF thing.
Yeah.
It's actually built into Adobe,
Is it?
Adobe Reader.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you just open a simple PDF, it's this guy right here.
Oh,
But this is pretty cool. This is what I didn't know. So if you highlight, it's always yellow by default.
Okay.
If you right click on it and go to properties, this is where you can change the color.
Nice.
oh, nicely done, Jeff.
And it's built right in.
Super.
But
There
the
you go.
person has to have Adobe Acrobat.
No, it's Adobe Reader.
Adobe
They can use Reader,
Adobe, okay.
which is the free one.
Oh, did you see
Students
that?
will just steal
Oh,
it.
Didn't see that.
In general, yeah.
My pants just left the table.
Didn't notice.
I'm not quite sure what I was saying. Goodness, Teresa.
So that's it.
Okay, so then
Thank you.
so when we think about this, you can tell your students that you can do it with a highlighter or, I love that, that's a great idea because I need to keep it PDF,
Right.
put up in Blackboard.
And you can save it with your highlight.
Nice.
Yeah.
Then they can save it and they can upload it and you
Yeah,
can.
you can have your colors to show them and walk them through it. Yeah.
Right,
Well,
right.
not only that, but you
Yeah.
could actually put up the PDF and then have them come up to
Yeah,
the teaching station saying, now highlight the main idea,
Sure.
yeah,
and have different people come up and do different things.
For sure.
yeah, you can do that, you can do it in groups, you can do it in pairs.
Yeah,
What
right.
a great way to think, share, let people think about it.
Well, if you do it in groups and then save it,
Yeah.
then each team can get up and open up their PDF and show what they've done.
They can teach the class. That's
Right.
the goal. Yeah.
Exactly.
And you can sit and get paid. Yeah, exactly. I like
Been
it.
working on that one for a while.
I think you're going to succeed. The next one is a little bit harder. It's called Graphic Organizers, Charts or Diagrams. But what's nice about it is this is something that, it's not really harder, but it's a little bit more work for you because it's, you'd be wanting to provide them with, or you can say to them, go find blank ones and then fill it in or something like that. And this doesn't always, for me, this wouldn't be relevant to anything I do in my class, but it's relevant to a lot of faculty that might do coding or like medical class or something like that. That might be the brain. So that one's pretty self-explanatory. You can either have them go find, or you can provide and have them, study guides.
One thing I did want to mention, going back to Blackboard,
Yeah.
is so for your quizzes, you can add images to the quizzes, and then you can add I forget the official name for it, but it's like a bookmark where you mark on the image where is it, and then the question is where is the blank so and so found, and then they have to go to the image and click on the right spot.
Right.
So you can do something like this using Blackboard as well.
And study guides.
Oh, it's called a hotspot. That's the name, hotspot. Yeah, or even a quiz. Or, right, a study guide, to give them a practice test.
We're not talking about quizzes.
I know, give them a study guide of, if you do a lot of, anything that has to do with images, you can replicate this in Blackboard. That's my point.
That's really cool. I'm going to just revise this whole session here.
It's great. You could take these names off and put your name. Banding on it. Put it on your. Do you guys do CV updates too?
Might be neat if I do that plagiarizing.
Yeah.
Well, and Peggy's really good at describing what these things are, and then I find the technology that matches these things.
Yeah.
So it kind of fits in pretty well.
It is
Good
awesome.
synergy.
It is awesome. So the last one, Bob, is called bullet notes, and this is pretty self-explanatory. But if you take it, okay, so now you've offered up that there's one way to do like a term chart. There's a lot of terms. But what if there's not a lot of terms? What if the article has only, doesn't have terms and definitions, doesn't have, now you've gone to the analyzing the article or analyzing the chapter of the textbook. This is a great way to offer them up, just a 2-column, what's the learning outcome and what's the answer. The learning outcome could be, or you can name it, what are the key points, or what are the supporting points. This is where you can just offer up and then you can say, now it's supporting points, but now the answer, this is where they're going to paraphrase. So this could be a great thing to tie to that matrix and make this the reflective piece. Okay, now here's the supporting point, so what is your reflection? But what you want to also, so if the learning outcomes, why do people take the risk of entrepreneurship? You've now taken that, they're taking key points. Am I making sense? I think I'm talking in circles. So I just went 2 different directions. I apologize for that. So this main piece is how to get them to study for an article that doesn't have a lot of terms, definitions. Right. But I have used, I like using for some reason the 2 columns, and then you can interchange the column headers and make it effective for any type of a matrix.
So who's coming up with the learning outcomes? The students or the
Yes.
instructor?
This would be, these are all self-studies.
So they find the learning outcome, and then in their own words, they answer that learning outcome.
Right.
Or bullet it.
Right. And then the goal in the OCC class, then they would take this, turn it into the instructor, and the instructor would say, wow, based on the outcome. It's getting them to think for themselves without the instructor leading them through how to analyze an article or text.
So I would imagine that the learning outcome would be the important thing to make sure they have it right, before they spend time bulleting the answer.
Yeah, so this could be a 2-part.
Yeah.
So you can say, take phase 1, do the learning outcome, phase 2, do the answers.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And the reason they have bullet points is because a lot of, especially international students, are very paragraph, very essay writing. I have about a 70-30 split in my class with a lot of international students in my undergrad class, and they have a really hard time grasping that they can write bullet points. And I will give them a clear call, okay, here's very similar to that matrix, and this is how I want you to write this. I don't want you to write a paragraph. Because, and maybe I'm wrong, but I want to know that they understand the key points, and I want to know exactly, I want them to bullet underneath, because when they start writing paragraphs, they are all over the place, and I have such a hard time figuring out if they even know that they grasp the concept.
Right.
And if I had them do, here's the key point, here's the bullets. I don't even make them do full sentences and have to have them do bullet points. For me, that's really effective.
Right.
So that is that section.
Sorry.
Okay. Those are the five methods. The next method is preparing effectively for exams. You can go back and play now. I worked hard on this PowerPoint. I just want to make sure that everyone sees it.
It's getting recorded regardless of what I'm on.
But when you're on the recording, so you can see what you're doing.
No,
Oh, so you can.
I didn't share my screen. They're always looking at the PowerPoint.
Bummer.
They're looking at your PowerPoint, what you wanted.
That's right. So this last one is a little bit trickier for the students, but it's really, really effective for instructors that have quizzes or, if you walking them through the study notes, now they can take their study notes and predict questions. This is towards the end of the semester, so they've gone through an entire semester. So what you can think about it is, okay, so you have a midterm coming up. I know Jeff has a midterm coming up in his class. This would be a great way to say to the students, you know what, I'm going to have multiple choice questions, and I'm going to have essay questions. And what I want you to do is, before next week, because my midterm is in 3 weeks, you tell me, start predicting some questions. So you'll see on the bullet point where it says multiple choice questions, it has definition questions, example questions, and list questions. All three of those bullets reflect right back to what we did in the read, think, highlight. So they can take, and then that all reflects back to the term chart. So now we've highlighted, they've done a term chart. Now they can very easily potentially predict the multiple choice questions. By doing that, we're not asking them to predict potential answers. We're asking them to predict potential questions, and then what is the right answer. Because if they said, something about that tattooing means blah, 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 and then they put answer A, it doesn't matter what the three above or anybody else puts for B, C, and D. Because they're going to be able to read the question, oh, wow, it's on the test, and be able to see the right answer.
Right.
This is a fantastic way. Believe it or not, I'm so thrilled because when my oldest daughter was in high school, I had her do this process. Predict. What do you think is going to happen? And every time as she went through 9th grade and 10th grade, by the time she was a junior and senior, she was really good at predicting. And then she did really well. She sailed through college because she was able to really forecast and be able to predict. Sometimes she was way off, but that's okay, she studied anyway. And then essay questions, this is a great one. These can be pulled from the analyzing the article matrix very easily. And it can also be pulled where there was a definition questions, they can say describe or explain or discuss that definition. If they come up with a multiple choice question, they should also be able to discuss it or define it. And then what they had us do is, the next article is what is culture. They had us go through this article, which I'm not going to have you do because I think the next important thing is if you go to the last 2 pages of this packet, the one is called Study Notes, Term Chart, Textbook Assignment 1. Here is a blank example of that term chart that I was talking about that you can give to your students. On the very last page, what's called Predicting Test Questions, what is culture? This is a fantastically written, simple way to share with your students and say, know what, this top one is a definition question, an example question, and a list question. Here's how you would do it, here's how you would set it up. But what you could do is, this could be very easily replicated, where it says number 1, what is definition of culture? Take that out, and you can leave it blank. You just leave it totally blank. Give them this as a great example, but then also have one and remove this out, and then have them, again, it could be a great wiki, and they can actually fill in specific questions. This could very easily move into an assignment, or very easily help them, instead of you writing up or come up with a study guide, you can have the class come up with their own study guide for the midterm.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Share it on Wiki. That's what you do, active self-learning. And she said and
Yeah, because I mean, ultimately it's always the same. What's going to be on the test? Or what are the essay questions going to be like?
Or is it going to be on the test?
Yeah.
You know,
You tell me.
you know, if they can predict this out,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely,
then they can
yeah.
also predict an essay question. You know, and if they can respond and answer it in class, they're in really great shape for studying for their test. And then the very, very last thing on the page, and I think we're way ahead of schedule, I don't have a problem about that, is where it says textbook assignment word of culture. This is a great scoring guide. This is just something to help if you like to use rubrics, and it just allows you to do. I like it because of the different information inside of each of the cells could be very easily translated into any one rubric. You know, the way that they described the different. Each of the rows has, so this is there, so they've done a presentation, they did a preview, highlight, study notes, question, predicting, and a quiz, and a total. This could be very easily translated into a rubric in Blackboard. And if you come to our assessment series, 3 parts, rubric, actually I have your rubric, how to do assessment, and assessment.
When are you doing that?
So, 3 things. Upcoming events that
Yeah, because you've been sending this email out like every week, right?
yeah, we bombard you with the first one.
Right.
So the first one is by Megan Oakley on February 7th. Hers is during the day, and we're going to offer lunch for that one. And she's going to discuss what a rubric is and the difference between analytic and holistic rubric. You know, and give examples like this, and hopefully in the session we'll be able to work through rubrics. We are going to encourage everyone to bring an assignment and or a rubric that you've done when we worked, and hopefully you can walk away with it. We worked with information. She's really good. Then part 2 is on the 22nd, and the next 2 sessions are in the evening again. And part 2, then part 3 is how to then put it in the Blackboard. What was part 2? Part 2 is imagine the classroom, you know, what types of assessments you do in the classroom. And then...
Do you have to do them sequentially, or?
No, you can come to 1 or all 3 or 2. What we're trying to do is we're doing separate, like this is a separate session. But we've had a lot of faculty ask about assessment and rubrics and how to integrate them into Blackboard. So we decided to do an assessment series.
Right.
And we'll probably do some sort of a series every semester. We might even repeat the assessment series depending on how well it goes. And then that is reading across the curriculum. And that we've taken you through read, think, highlight, how to analyze an article, how to do study notes, and how to predict questions. Now, I'm not saying that you should or could use all 4 of these, but what I would like you to do now is take a second to think about your class. And would one of these or 2 or 3 or 4 work for your class, and then how would that work for your class? You know, and then I could easily work with you and pull this packet apart, because I have it uploaded we're going to upload it into the session handout as a PDF. So I could very easily pull this apart by just pulling the staple out of it. And I'm thinking about, and I would love if you implement any of this in the class to let me know, and then ask formatively from your students and say, I'm going to implement this process. What do you think about it? I would love to hear what you did and what was the outcome of the students think. Because that's where I'm going to start building the history for this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think I can definitely use a lot of this,
Okay.
especially about the summary and the highlighting, especially since we've got that idea to use Adobe, right?
Yeah, so would you think that you'd do the highlighting through probably more of a digital?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
that
I'd
might
love to
work
hear
the best
about that.
for me, yeah. I think, because I have stuff already, and now if I start using it, because I like the concept, but I was just
Right.
thinking, how am I going to get all these